All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the ICA Show. I am Alan, your host, and I'm joined by Luke, the co-host. Luke, I missed you last week.
Yes, but today I'm back and ready for business.
Good, back and ready for business. Well,
Yep.
business is what you're going to get today. Instead of our usual 2, we have 3 games we're going to go over, all from the National Chess Congress. We had some big results, starting with Oleg and Jane. Both of them actually are playing on mixed teams, and their team actually won first place, with both finishing second place in their individual sections. They won first place for the team, so let's bring them on to congratulate them. Oleg, Jane, how are you doing?
Good.
Good. Hi, guys.
All right,
Hello.
so Oleg, before we get into your game, we'll do a brief interview. So, when did you first get into chess?
I think when I was about 8 years old, at the time it was considered early. Right now it's probably very, very late.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think it's never too late or too early to get in chess because when I stopped, I got back. I got it when I was a kid. I stopped and I got back in when I was in college, and now we're having this show. So let me ask you, what has chess done for you, mainly as a person?
I think chess does a lot to a person. I think primarily it's logical thinking and ability to kind of deal with various non-standard scenarios. So for example, obviously kind of life is not predictable. So every time you're faced with different challenges, it's kind of similar to what you have over the board, where you have different positions, where are kind of things to orientate yourself, similar to life, like there are kind of things to know, like different, the fact that, in open positions, bishop is stronger than the knight. So there are things kind of to orient yourself to think about, but generally every position is new. So, and basically knowing that helps you in different situations in life, which are also kind of similar, but kind of different.
Yeah, definitely. I have one more question. You have 2 kids. Both of them are into chess. One of them was actually on our show a few weeks ago. So, why do you have them play chess a lot, and how do you think it has helped them overall?
This kid is different. You cannot make them do anything. So just it's totally their choice. They like it, they enjoy it, and I'm happy for them.
That's good.
That's like
All right,
that.
Odette. Let's get right into it. So, the game started. D4. All right, the game started. D4, D5, C4, E6, Knight F3, C6, E3, Knight F6. Luke, nothing interesting, just standard theory now, right?
Yep, this is a pretty typical semi-Slav, and I guess now is where, as white, you can sort of decide where the game's going to go.
So now we continue.
Yeah.
Bishop D3, Bishop C6, B3, castling, Bishop D2, Bishop B2. All right, so at this point, it's still just a lot of opening. Knight BD7, castle, rook E8, Knight E5. Still a lot of opening.
Maybe just worth kind of stopping one move before. So basically, in those types of positions, black needs to break through, either with E5 or C5. So obviously, by going rook E8, so black is pointing out that they want to break through with E5. So knight E5, in addition to putting the knight in the center, is also a prophylactic move against E5.
You're preventing the rook from supporting, sort of clogging up the middle of the board. Yeah, it's a nice move. So queen C7, of course, attacking the knight now. And I actually really like this next decision, F4. So we get this sort of stonewall structure. So is this a structure you have, a lot of familiarity with, or was this a new thing you were playing today?
I think, like you said, Luke, so the idea here is to make sure that knight on E5 doesn't move, because it kind of serves several purposes. So first of all, being it stops E5. Second of all, it points to the fact that rook on E8 is kind of misplaced right now, just doesn't do anything. It's kind of probably like if anything, it's better be placed back on f8 where it supports the pawn on f7, as right now it's kind of getting a little bit loose. And also, lastly, it's important to, once you gain space, it's important to support the space. So f4 supports the space. So that's kind of a very important move, as you pointed out.
Mhm. Yeah, so really making sure that knight's going to, if it's ever going to be captured, you're going to land a pawn on e5, which is going to open your rook on the f file, kick away that crucial knight on f6 as a defender of the king. And yeah, black is going to have a heavy price to pay. Also, just for people who maybe haven't seen this idea before, very common blunder. People don't want to give up the dark sword bishop for a knight, so a lot of beginners will want to trade knights. You always have to remember when the position is changing here. If you capture the knight on e5 with your own knight on d7, you're going to lose a piece, because at the end of the day, there'll be a fork. So just easy tactics, but something always to be aware of. It's very difficult to capture this knight as black in a good way. So, okay, d takes c4, and knight takes c4. So
Yeah, here
going
was
after this.
Yeah, here was a little bit of a choice. So white could take with a pawn or could take with a knight. The decision to take with a knight was primarily dictated by two things. So first of all, it attacks the bishop, so it's taken with a tempo. And second of all, and I thought the kind of idea of keeping c file open could be handy, because there is a queen on c7. So when if rook comes to c1, then it will be pinning the queen. So that's why the decision was to take the pawn with a knight, who taking with a pawn was also possible.
Yeah, I also like the decision of taking with the knight. It seems very stable. After b takes, maybe there's like a c5 move that
Exactly.
could be a little bit, yeah, disruptive. So okay, knight takes c4, bishop e7. So spending another tempo with this bishop, and now we just develop. Okay, knight d5, attacking the slightly weakened e3 pawn, but very easy to defend it. Queen f3, and here a move that I thought was a little bit bizarre, b5. So I guess the idea is very obvious, right? Attacking the knight, but it's a little bit maybe rash, right? It seems a little bit almost too aggressive. There's going to be a lot of weaknesses left around this on the dark squares around this b5 pawn. But okay, knight just comes back, and now another move that I thought was a little bit, well, maybe more than a little bit strange, taking on e5, and now your entire setup this is exactly what you want as white, right? So was this in the game, did this come as a shock, or were you was your opponent thinking for a long time and they made this move, or was this a snap decision?
I think was a minute or two think, but visually looked like the opponent was a little bit depressed at this point, because the position is at this stage is a little bit difficult, because rook comes to c1, the other knight comes to e4. There is a f3 attack on a king side with either queen h3 or queen h5. So it's really problematic for black. But I agree that taking the knight was kind of making position even worse.
All right,
Yeah.
Jane. All right, Jane. So I'd like to ask you, as we see this position looks pretty doom and gloom for black, at what point would you change? So redeem black pretty much.
What do you mean?
So at what point in the game would you deviate from black's plan?
I think to Luke's point, maybe b5 idea was not too fantastic. So because
B5 looked like not a good move here.
Yeah, maybe you go b6 or something like this. And okay, it's still
It's great bishop maybe. Black's
yeah.
isn't very appealing.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you also go like knight f8 and knight g6 to at least try to clog this diagonal. Now, that also comes with its own problems, like at some point you're walking into some sort of pawn thrusts, f5, or also h4 and h5 at some moment. But the knight on f8, they say, is knight f8, never mate, which is not always true, but I think black probably would
It
have
has to be true
survived a
because it
little longer.
primes.
Yeah, well, of course, anything that rhymes is automatically true. But yeah, I think knight f8, even like right here, just as long as you're not creating these really serious weaknesses on the dark squares, it's always important when you're pushing a pawn. You have to remember you can't push it back. You can't ever now bring this pawn back to control a5 or c5. So you're left with a lot of weaknesses along the c file and on the dark squares, just sort of in general. Also, let's not forget about this diagonal, slightly weakened as well. Now, that's the long-term thing, but chess is a long-term thinking type of game. But okay, so we'll go back to the original position. F takes e5, of course, opening up the queen and rook. Bishop g5, slightly awkward square for the bishop, but it's opening up the queen's defense here, and just very simple, bringing all the pieces into the game. I'll just point one thing out, and I'll admit I did cheat here. I looked at this earlier pretty quickly with the computer. I'll just say it wants to go knight e4, and I thought this was just worth pointing out to show how strong white's position is. Just sacking the pawn on e3, and the point is this bishop is just has like nowhere to go, and the knight's coming to d6 with really serious pressure here. Now, okay, this is a very computer idea. This is a very just bizarre move to even consider, but it just goes to show how strong white's position is. But of course, the very natural, and I think everybody would play this move, rook a to e1. All the pieces are playing. Looks like a really, really nice position, and knight e4 is coming, whether black likes it or not. So I like this move as well. Bishop b7. Okay, that's a sad piece there. Knight comes into the game, joining the attack. Bishop d8. Again, this bishop has like nowhere to go, right? You can't go to e7 because you disconnect the queen's defense of f7. And it's, again, worth pointing out, this pawn on e5, whenever there's this sort of wedge that you gain with a pawn on e5, this extra space, it's not just extra space, it also prevents your opponent from bringing, key defenders to their king. So this, it's not just that the f file's open, it's also we're really restricting black's pieces. Okay, bishop d8, queen h3, so lining up some pretty nasty tricks on h7, knight f6 at some moment here. Okay, g6, and yeah, now rook f3. And was your plan here to double up on the f file or something else?
Yeah, so it's this is the main plan. There are sub plans of like primarily like let's say queen h6 and rook h3, but then just the simplistic plan here is to double up on the f pawn and potentially later on with knight d6 and then kind of break through this way. But queen h6 rook h3 ideas need to be kind of accounted for as well.
Yeah. It's difficult to suggest a move here for black. Maybe the rook belongs back on f8 here, like you said earlier. But okay, queen e7. Reasonable, I guess, sort of plan to maybe go full tortoise mode against this to protect the king here. And g3. This I thought was a very nice move too. You're just trying to stop the trade of queens, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So queen h4 seemed like the only threat, so to speak, which threatens queen exchange and also attacks the rook on e1. So g3 is a simple way to stop it. And then generally kind of those prophylactical moves, they tend to throw opponents off, because suddenly you want to do something and you're being stopped, and then you need to come up with a different plan. So just general recommendation is, so just watch out for opponents' ideas and try to stop them.
Yeah, and again, very difficult for okay, it might look like a slow move, but it goes to show how I mean, you can sort of take your time here to build up the attack as white. Okay, so Queen F8 again, embodying the spirit of the turtle in this position is black, and just doubling up. And yeah, this is just visually. I don't think you probably don't even have to know the rules of chess to know this is a winning position for white. Everything is perfectly placed here. I guess the only way to improve the position is get this bishop like to h6. Oh, I've realized get this bishop to h6 somehow, but no need even. Knight d6, and yeah, it's getting pretty ugly. f5, just take it en passant.
Yeah, f5 was kind of forced because the idea was, so like, let's say if you make a passing move, let's say a6, a5, then
yeah,
so then basically you can already take on f7, knight f7, rook f7, doesn't matter.
yeah,
Yeah, so you can take queen takes, knight takes, and then at the end there is also queen h7. Everything falls off. So, and since there is no way to defend, then f5 was kind of forced, which, as you said, Luke, is a very sad decision because you can take ampersand and everything else falls.
Yeah, the rook's like almost trapped here, but yeah, okay, rook f7, and again, no need to rush. Just queen takes e6, and the rook is gonna fall anyway because of the pin. So yeah, all in all, very very nice game. Very sort of methodical win, and yeah, any final thoughts on the game? Any suggestions where black might have improved, or where maybe you any final thoughts on the game is my question.
I think we can probably, like, in terms of improvements, we can go back to the opening, maybe move 3. Unfortunately, just kind of to say a few things here. So yeah, so on let's say e3, so e3 here, knight f6, bishop d3. So probably taking here dc is an idea. So dc, bishop c4, and go b5 here.
Yeah.
There's bishop d3, and then standard Slav play with bishop b7 and knight d7, and then later on a6 and c5. Exactly. So just standard Slav play. So this way you as black want to make sure that all the pieces are playing. So knight is in the right position, d7. So if after you play c5 and there is an active bishop, so it becomes kind of a standard queen's gambit / Slav play. So I think that's an important point, and kind of black waited a little bit, which allowed white to build up all the pieces in the center, kind of solidify with knight on e5, and everything else was quite simple.
Yeah, and these types of positions for black tend to get a little sharper than when we saw in that game. So yeah, all in all, very nice game, and I guess we could leave it there. So
I'd like to take you to the point before we leave it there. So at the point b5, knight e5, knight takes e5, we have a comment from Yakov, which I'd like you guys to address. Maybe knight takes e5 was worried about queen h5?
How so?
That is for Yakov.
The idea, I think Yakov is saying that black took knight e5 because queen h5 would be a double attack on f7 and h7.
I see. Okay.
So
well, I mean, you could go g6. I mean, of course, that's not the prettiest move to play. But,
but I think Yakov is trying to justify the move knight e5, which is a very reasonable point. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I could see the thought process there. Yeah, I guess that. Let's just go with that. Yeah, let's say that's what they were thinking about.
And to the en passant, you have another comment.
Okay.
So, comment is, It's more of a fun one, not much of a technical one. That position changed really fast after the en passant. Well, as you see, the pressure was on for pretty much in the entire half of the game, but the en passant was like the straw that pretty much broke the camel's back. Don't you guys agree?
Yeah, one way to think
Yeah.
about it, so it's all about that f7 pawn, and in pawn chains, like you often need to go for the root. So in this pawn chain structure, let's say f7 g6 or f7 e6, f7 pawn was the one holding the whole structure. So basically, we go for that f7 pawn, which allows us to kind of to destroy the position around the king, which is applicable to other types of pawn chains as well. So then when we take that pawn by en passant, so yeah, so it's kind of very fair comment. So the whole chain is now destroyed.
Mhm. Yeah. Any other comments or?
No, that's it.
That's
All right,
it.
Oleg,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining. And
Thank
we
you.
really
Thank you for
appreciate it.
inviting.
I hope to see you in the future on our show.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you for inviting. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so before we get into the next game, I'd like to take you guys to a quick commercial break. So this commercial break is about the Dr. David Oswald Memorial ICA Championships, ICA's biggest tournament, which is actually going to be next week on December 10th. So there are 7 sections. Sections 1 and 2 are unrated. Section 1 is for K to 2. Section 2 is K to 4. And then it gets more challenging. Section 3 is our first rated section, under 800. Section 4 is also rated under 1200. Section 5 under 1400. Then we get to our cash sections, all those previous 5 pro trophies. Under 1600, it's cash prizes. And then the open, over 1600, even bigger cash prizes. So why am I addressing this tournament now? Well, because the tournament's in a week, and tonight, 11:59 p.m., is the last day to register early bird. So if you register after today, you decide, oh, I want to play this tournament, looks good. Well, unfortunately, you're going to have to pay more. So you should register tonight if you want to get the best deal. And that concludes my commercial break. We are now joined, finally, by Jack Holder. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, so before we get into your game, let's get into the questions. So at what point did you get into chess?
Like about 10 months ago, so close to a year.
Oh wow, only 10 months ago. What's your rating now?
Like 1250.
Ooh, my God. That's only 100 points away from me now. And we already told you guys my story. What happened?
Well, Thomas was playing a lot of chess, and I just got interested. And then like I went to the summer camp, and that like I learned a lot and I gained a lot of rating.
Yeah, these summer camps, maybe it'll feature a commercial break in the future. Those camps really do teach you a lot. I saw with Keon Hell before camp, he wasn't a good player. After camp, he ended up defeating me. That's the first game I ever went over with Luke, and it was the start of us thinking, maybe we should do this show where we go over other games. So yeah. What's your next goal in the game? Is it just to learn more, or is there a specific tournament you have in mind?
I don't have any like massive goals. I'm gonna try and do well in the K through 12 nationals in Florida. And I'm hoping maybe I can get to like 1300 and beyond. And I guess that would be like the goal right now, like between 13 and 1400.
Well, here's a goal for you. Try to get to 1400 before me. All right.
My money's on Jack.
Yeah, my money's on Jack also. I don't play
he's
too
got
much
a
tournaments. I don't have
deeper
the time for this.
trajectory.
Yeah. All right, Luke. Take
Okay.
it away.
All right. Let's continue. Okay. Yeah. So you start out with e4. Do you always play e4? Is that your move of choice?
No, sometimes I play like a ready. But
Okay.
I play e4 mostly.
I like it. It's always good to have multiple weapons in your arsenal. Okay, e5 by black, knight f3, Okay, so we get an Italian for knight f6. 10. Oh yes, commenter. 10 months. I've been playing for years and still not in the thousands. Well, that's
Luke, reminds me a little bit
the
of you.
child's brain for you. It's,
Reminds me a little of you,
younger
Luke.
people tend to take off. What, Alan?
Reminds me a little bit of you.
Yes.
One day we'll have to interview you again, for those that missed your story.
Oh yeah, well the videos are always back up on the YouTube. Okay, so
Yeah,
knight g5 though. So fried liver. This is a
Yeah.
very tricky
Ooh.
opening. So d5, he
Yeah.
takes d5, and very impressive by black. They know the theory. Knight a5.
Yeah, I think I think I don't know. I think like around this level, it's like when they start like if they're gonna continue playing the two knights, like they have to know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just to go over the trick, you know, for people who haven't seen this, or at least not seen the problem with knight takes d5, this of course looks like the natural move. So okay, just to go back, knight g5, we're attacking f7, right? So any capture there is going to be basically game over. So d5, of course, is the only way to block that up. We take it, and the natural thing is, well, recapture the pawn, right? But Jack, do you want to go over why this fails?
We can just play knight takes f7.
Yeah, knight takes f7 anyway.
And
So
after
forking.
it takes queen f3 check, I mean castles d5 like knight c3. Like there's a lot coming and it's like really hard to stop. Plus your king's in the middle of the board.
Yeah, so if they want to hold on to the material, which they kind of have to, because they've already black is sort of already what's the phrase? They've taken the plunge, so to speak. They already are. White has already sacrificed a piece, so if black's just gonna move their king back and allow white to recapture this piece and be up a pawn, black can't castle, they're just gonna lose. So they have to sort of wander out into the open to defend their knight. And yeah, Jack, like you said, we just keep hammering home the pressure on the pinned piece. Knight b4. This fork is nothing. We just castle because that knight is too important to the defense. So from what they say in books, that's supposed to be a winning position for white. It's always tricky whenever you're sort of trying to fight for compensation down a piece, but yeah, I have no doubt that you probably would have won from that position as well. So knight a5 is played in the game correctly. This is the main move. Black is sacrificing a pawn for the moment, but trying to claim that white's pieces are a little bit discoordinated. So okay, we give a check, and bishop d7. So
that ain't theory.
That is not the theoretical. Yeah, the main move is c6.
And I think queen e2 here, like after bishop d7, is good. But like I played takes, because I thought like after queen takes, then I could just develop my pieces, and they do take back the pawn, on d5. But then I castle, and like I'm ready to develop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so reasonable decision. Did you consider castling here? This I thought was also an idea.
No, I did not look at that. I mean,
yeah, actually, now that I'm looking at it too, I like your decision too. The one thing, yeah, this probably would lead to a more sort of drawish position. Like if takes, the typical idea is to take away from the center, which you usually don't do, but this way you develop your, or at least you open up your bishop. But yeah, maybe this end game is just completely fine for completely fine for black. So yeah, I like your decision.
Yeah.
So okay, we take everything. Black is gonna have to spend the tempo to fix that knight on the side of the board. d3 and bishop e3. So also a nice decision, inviting a change of structure. And if you were tuning into the last game, we see a similar pattern here where a capture with the f pawn, and we open up the f file for our rook now. So this is a very nice improvement here for white. We have a nice central majority in the center. Well, of course it's in the center. It's a central majority. Open f file, a lot of pressure down here, and okay, yes, there's some pressure against this diagonal, but I think you made the correct decision of, claiming that your pressure is going to be a lot stronger.
Yeah, because like we're defending plus like with the battery with the rook and the queen. Like I have ideas where like I could play like rook f2, rook f1, maybe something like that. I also have some other stuff, and I just thought like I really don't even care if I lose the c pawn because I have so much pressure. And if black spends a move to take that pawn, then like time in this position is like very important because like I have a lot of pressure.
I 100%
Definitely.
agree. Yeah, so of course now if they take, not only are they losing time, they're gonna lose their king too, right? This is gonna be a nice one. Yeah, but you're absolutely, I think, on the right train of thought. Okay, so they castle, which is an interesting decision because of course
Yeah, castling right
there's,
into the attack.
yeah, but I guess they're correctly maybe assessing that this pawn is a little bit dangerous to take because yes, you win a pawn.
I didn't want to take because like I don't know. I feel that like I feel it like doesn't keep all like the pressure. Like I feel like it like I feel like there's a better time. Like there's like a better time's gonna come when we could take it on.
Okay, very good instincts. I can see why you climbed the rating ladder so quickly. Yeah, so definitely your intuition I think is right, and even concretely a move like Queen E7, just piling up on the pin is going to be basically you're going to lose a piece, right? So yeah, that's going to be slightly problematic. So Queen H5 even better. Yeah, sacrificing pawns, but like you said, it's more important that we're applying pressure where it really hurts towards black's king. So okay, they take the bait. Queen takes e3, but okay, we just slide out of the way, and the threats remain, right? Threats on f7, h7 is, if we are allowed to take that, that's going to be checkmate.
And now the queen isn't pinned, so
yeah. And to grab this pawn, now black has had to wander away with their strongest piece. They had to wander away from the defense of their king. So this queen's completely out of play now. So this attack is just going to be even stronger. So okay, h6 is sort of forced, and now we just pick up a pawn, and yeah, the attack is sort of going to play itself from this point out. So okay, they try to bring this queen back, but maybe now they were starting to regret capturing that pawn on e3. I'm sure if black had the option, they'd very much like to, offer you a trade. Hey, I'll give you your pawn back on e3 if I can bring my queen back to save my king.
Yeah.
Because now black is just too slow. Rook f3, very similar to the last game we were looking at as well. Very similar plan. A rook lift to really seal the deal here. And okay, black, I guess, was feeling especially greedy today. They picked up yet another pawn.
Yeah, and hung mate in 4.
Yep. So I guess they say, if you're gonna die, you might as well go out on a full stomach, right? So black
Full stomach, right?
to,
Jack, take us through the mate check.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
I mean, like, there's just check, pawn takes, then rook check, then if the king comes to h2, there's just if the king goes to h7, then there's just queen g6 and queen g7. And if the king goes back to h8, it's even faster with just queen takes h6 checkmate.
Very nice. Yeah, and yet another example. Alan loves it when I bring this up. The rule of +2, right? When you're trying to launch a successful attack, you need 2 more attackers than your opponent has defenders. Here, only 1 rook, especially after queen takes e2. I mean, that queen is really
Yeah.
getting a workout, running all over the board. 3 attackers, 1 defender. I know math isn't my strong suit, but as far as I'm aware, that is 2 extra attackers towards that king, and it's too much, like you showed. So yeah, very nice finish to a, I think, perfectly played game. I don't think there was really much to be improved there. Very, very nice game, and you found the checkmate in a nice way. Okay, queen takes h6. I guess you have a,
Yeah,
here's
I've
an
right.
aesthetic preference. I guess maybe as a final point, was there any logic in deciding which checkmate to go for? Do you have any sort of artistic preference there?
No, but when I was actually calculating,
Mhm.
when I played knight takes check, I saw queen g7 mate, but
Okay.
then I don't know. I just then saw queen takes h6, and I personally think it's like a nicer mate.
I like it too. Personally, I'll tell you my sort of philosophy here. I always like the checkmate where you don't capture something. I don't know why. I always thought that was cool. But this one, very direct, very forceful, like a slam dunk. I think that's the right way to go from this game. Very direct type of game with a very direct type of finish. So well done, Jack.
Thank you.
And yeah, I guess we'll take it from there.
All right, Jack. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it's your choice. You want to stay on for the final segment, or you want to leave?
I guess I'll stay on.
All right, perfect. Well then, Luke, before we get into the final segment, just want to compliment you. You are on fire today with your analogies.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've.
Is this what happens when we give you a week break up from the show?
Yeah. Let's put it that way. But
Let's
that
put
way
it
I
that
get
way.
more time off.
A
No,
fresh
okay.
Luke?
Yeah.
Guess we need to give you more breaks then. Looks like we're not seeing you next week.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, on to the next.
On to the
Yeah.
next. Let's get into our final segment with the person that has been patiently waiting for the entire show. Jane, welcome.
Hi,
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So, let me ask you, when did you get into chess?
So I've actually been playing pretty much my whole life. Probably like 3 years old. I learned how the pieces move. 4 maybe, and yeah, pretty much my entire life I've been playing.
Now I'd like to ask you, your dad is a grandmaster. He was on the show a few weeks ago. Your mom's also a pretty good chess player. Your sister's a chess player. So, how does chess and talk of chess overall influence the Strapunsky household?
Well, we talk about it a lot. Obviously, my dad teaches. My mom always wanted me to play chess. I teach chess now too, so it gives me like many opportunities, and it's just really cool because it's something that's been part of my life for like a long time.
Well, it's good to see you back into it, and it's good to see you on our show. Let's get right into it, I guess, yeah?
Yeah.
Right, Luke?
Oh, yes. We'll start flipping through the moves. So, okay, you had black here, right? So,
Yeah.
we've seen a Slav before, in Oleg's game, it started out as a Queen's Gambit decline, but we got a Slav transposition. But in this game, exchange by white.
I'm not really
So-
sure why he played that because when me and my dad were going after like over the game after, he told me it was like a move that like usually leads to like a more drawish position, and this was like the last game in the tournament, and we were playing for first. So like, and someone needed to win if we would. So I'm not really sure why he played that. But.
Yeah, a lot of these exchange variations across all openings tend to be a little bit, like you said, drawish, because you're releasing the tension
Yeah.
at the soonest possible moment. I have some experience in this line from white side. There are some ways to push, but of course, in all of chess, with best play from black, it's always gonna, flatten out eventually. But yeah, I guess if you know what you're doing here as black, you can sort of flatten it more quickly than you can in some other more complicated lines. So okay, bishop f4. This is the standard way to play. You sort of go for a Jobava London style setup with knight c3, and you might argue it's improved because at least your knight is not blocking your c pawn in. So this is some of the logic to where maybe you can try to push for an edge as white, but yeah, like you said, there's only so much you can try to do here. So okay, knight f6. Both sides bringing out the knights. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I missed something really quickly. One thing to point out, knight b5, which is the common sort of trick in this line, similar to Jobava London, going for actually what you were going for in your last game with this, fishing for a fork here. It does not work because, importantly, white has not played e3 yet. Their knight is undefended, so we can throw in a check. And it's a fork, so we force the knight right back. So that's worth pointing out. Yeah, and actually it might be even worse because a move like queen b4 might be actually just directly winning material. So okay, e3, now threatening that little trick. So okay, we go e6. Still, knight b5 might be met with a queen a5 check, or a bishop b4, for example. Okay, knight f3, bishop e7, and a3. Slightly strange move by white. Maybe trying to again go fishing for a knight b5, stopping some checks on the e1 to a5 diagonal. Any thoughts on this move, a3?
Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of confused on why he played that. I thought maybe he didn't want me to pin his knight. I wasn't really sure. I felt like he should just develop his pieces and castle as quickly as possible. Felt like he was kind of just wasting a move.
Yeah, it is a little bit slow. Usually your pawn. Yeah, what, Alan?
Yeah, well, let me ask you, Jane. After e6, what future did you see for your light squared bishop?
Yeah, so my light square bishop was a little. I thought maybe somehow trade the pawn or something. Maybe try to develop it. Yeah, I really did not know what to do with that bishop.
Yeah, I play like bishop.
Go ahead, Jack.
Bishop f5 and then e6.
It's just
Yeah.
If bishop f5, I thought that he would go queen b3.
Yeah, there's always this slight trade-off with
Yeah.
developing that bishop. Here, and this is just one of those things where the more little patterns you pick up, the better. This type of position is actually almost directly transposing to an exchange Caro-Kann.
Yeah,
Slightly different. The knight will usually go to d2 in that one. But just one thing to point out, here, the question of how to defend this pawn.
I think
Okay, there's a couple ways, right? You can go queen b6.
Go ahead, Jack. Go ahead, Jack.
I think like queen b6.
Yeah,
Yeah, queen b6 is normal.
I like them.
Sometimes you will see this trade, even though black is getting the open a file. The fact that these pawns are doubled and isolated means it's going to be a little bit more. White is getting a little bit more to play against than black is getting play along the a file. Here you might see a move like a3, for example, to negate the pressure of this rook. But just one thing to point out. Oh, and okay, two things to point out. One, right, these pawns are difficult to push forward. When you have isolated pawns that are doubled, the fact that they're isolated means they're sort of frozen in place, right? You have weak squares in front of the isolated pawns and not a lot of backup to support. So not to say that that's like a bad position or a losing position or anything for black. It just might be slightly unpleasant. But in these types of situations, if you're going to defend the pawn any other way, you know, queen d7 looks like the natural follow-up. Often you'll see this move queen c8, and it looks a little bit weird, but it's sort of one of these, you know, just thinking a little bit deeper. The logic of putting the queen to c8 is that you're never running into knight e5. So just a slight, you know, a small detail. Often when you're trying to defend this pawn with the queen, and maybe you don't want to trade queens on b6, maybe you want to keep it a little bit more, keep a little more tension in the position. A move like queen c8 instead of queen d7 is avoiding a lot of tricks where you're getting hit with some knight e5 and bishop b5 combination. So just thought I'd point that out. Okay. In any case, e6. So keeping this bishop at home for the moment, but okay, there's a lot of openings where that happens, so it's not the end of the world. It will be a little bit passive, but you know, there's you know, we can develop it somewhere or another. Maybe b6, maybe just bishop d7. Okay, knight f3 by white, bishop e7. Yeah, and this move a3 is slightly strange. Just castle, bishop d3, and a6. So when you played a6, were you preparing a move like b5, or were you just preventing something from white coming to b5?
Kind of both. I was thinking
Okay.
about b5. I wasn't really sure. Probably b5. Maybe somehow get the rook on the c file.
Yep, seems reasonable. Okay, h3 and h6. So we're both doing what I like to call the baby crab, right? We're both doing this on the sides of the board. Now, one thing from white here, I thought they might have had an option to go g4. Alan, you might remember that first game that we broadcasted. These two pawn pushes are not made the same. The fact that black is castled means that now this is, okay, it's a hook. That's what it is, right? I was going to say you can argue it's a hook, but it really is one, right? So now imagine if there were a pawn to land on g5, it would not only make contact with a knight, but it would also bump into that pawn, and it would force the issue, right? Something's going to open up if one of white's pawns lands on g5. Something like this in g5, or even sometimes you see a move like rook g1 and g5. So maybe there was a opportunity from white, but they just castle. Was this a long think or by white, or sort of a instant decision to castle?
Yeah, it was kind of instant.
I guess, yeah, that makes some sense. Okay, also, maybe he's trying to secure a space for the bishop. Sometimes a knight h5 can be a little bit annoying.
Yeah.
Okay, we castle. And now bishop d6. I actually really like this decision. The downside of h3 is now you can't drop back, right? Which is a common response here. So, yes, we're moving the bishop a second time, but it's a different position from when you moved it to e7 originally, right?
Yeah.
So now that the pawn is on h3, you're sort of forcing an exchange here. So takes, queen takes. Of course, the recapture with the queen now activates the queen as well. So e4, which looks very aggressive, but maybe a little too aggressive.
Yeah, I was a little confused when he made that move. It was like a long think too, so I was a little. He creates himself an isolated pawn, which later, so
yeah. And now
it allowed him to develop the bishop.
Yeah, and then this next. Yeah,
one think always means seems as if white ran out of ideas here. So before we move on, let me ask you, Luke, give a decent plan for white.
A lot of times in these types of positions, you want to play on the c file. So a move maybe like rook c1 and or maybe even right away with knight a4 is a typical idea, trying to take advantage of the slightly weakened dark squares, right? So a lot of times you'll see this type of plan. Sometimes even a b4 and b5 move. It's not quite the same as the typical minority attack you see in a lot of different semi-Slav or Queen's Gambit declines positions. because usually there's a pawn on c6. So yeah, this b4 and b5 plan might only serve to help actually activate black's own pieces to open up the a file. So yeah, I like this type of organization. Knight a4, rook c1, trying to play for the weak dark squares and just claim that you have a better situation with the bishops from white's perspective, because white's important pawns, their central pawns, are all on dark squares, complementing that light squared bishop, whereas the opposite is true for black. So I think that probably would be the way to go, knight a4. But yeah, e4 is just a little bit too much. Maybe they were thinking, you know, oh, they're ahead in development, they're trying to force the issue, but really they're not that far ahead in development, right? Like, yes, this bishop is still stuck, but it's sort of a, you know, yes, you're opening up the position as white, but in opening it up, you're also going to trade a lot of pieces, right? So trade, and here another, I think, very bad decision by white. They trade another set of pieces. So when you have the isolated pawn, you're trying to, you want to keep pieces on the board, right? Because the less pieces you have, the put it this way, right? Your pawn, it's isolated, it has no neighbors. That means it has to be defended by something that's not a pawn, right? So the more things you're trading off that aren't pawns, the fewer potential defenders there are going to be for that pawn on d4. So it's just going to get looser and looser the more trades of pieces that happen. So this one, maybe trying to claim there's some sort of dark squared play against a bad bishop, but I think that's a pretty flimsy argument to make here. So queen e2, b5. So maybe going for this, right? b5 looks like a nice move, sort of similar to a various like e6 Sicilians, right? You see this type of similar structure with this arrangement of pieces with this fianchetto on the light squared diagonal like this. And now, the more I look at it, I think this bishop is going to become very strong, the light squared bishop now that it's finding some breathing room. So thoughts around this point in the game? Did you think you were much better, slightly better? What were you thinking about around here?
I'm kind of getting nervous at this point in the game because my time was not very good, and we weren't even close to 40 moves. So I was kind of getting nervous, but I like kind of created a plan for myself and tried to follow it.
Before we continue, can you quickly tell us what the time control was?
Yeah, so it was 120, like I think it was 120 minutes, and then sudden death 40, and then you get 30 minutes added to your clock when you flag if you reach 40 moves.
Yeah, so time pressure is never fun, but if you're going to have time pressure in any position, I guess this is the type of position to have it in. A lot of easy moves to play here. Bishop e7, easy pressure against this pawn here, and I'm just curious. Actually, okay, queen d6 looks normal. I always want to do this type of setup. I always thought this looks very just again from an aesthetic perspective. This sort of arrangement of you push the pawn to b5 and then you put the queen behind on b6. Sometimes you see a similar thing even on the king side with g5 and you get the queen to g6. I always thought that looked nice, but I guess queen d6 does basically the same thing, putting pressure on the pawn. And once the bishop comes to b7, like we said, the more pieces that come off the board, the weaker that pawn's going to become. So just the fact that the bishop is going to come to b7 is already coming with tempo, right? The fact that you're threatening always to take the knight and grab the pawn on d4. So yeah, rook d1.
We have a quick question from the audience.
Okay.
So Yakov asked at, I think, this point,
was there any way to trade to save the pawn? That's actually a good point. There must be some better way to play other than this. I mean, I guess that's a fair
maybe
point
double
you
up on the
raised.
d file and push, or that's too slow.
Maybe like rook c1. I'm thinking maybe there's some way to sack the pawn, right? Because if you have to give up the bishop for the knight like this, then e4 is just a bad move. right? I mean, I think it's a bad move anyway, or at least an inaccurate move. But if you have to do this, then it's just, how can it be good if you're forcing yourself into this bad endgame? Like maybe a move like Rook C1. If we just play this out, a lot of times you can get a type of endgame like maybe it's actually maybe it's all bad. I mean, maybe this is even some sort of chance with the pressure along the diagonal, Rook C7, right? Maybe you can play, but yeah, even something. Maybe you go like, maybe something like this, right? I mean, I think you can. This is definitely within the realm of drawing for white. This actually. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot this isn't mate. I'm sorry, I'm thinking. Oh no, this should work. Yeah, you can't take on B2. This looks like a zeros position to me. Let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, yeah. This. Well, yeah. Okay. Not really what you want playing with white, but that looks like the best way to go to at least sack the pawn, right? And not be in a miserable position like black finds himself a few moves later on. But yeah, definitely not something you want to realize you have to do, right? You're playing with white, trying to be aggressive, and then it's difficult to put yourself in the mind space that like, oh, I thought I was better, but now I have to sack a pawn and hold a draw endgame. But yeah, if you're gonna go down that line, like you said, Yakov, is there any way to play without taking the knight? I think Rook C1 is the way to go. At least trying to get something for the activity. But then again, Rook C1, maybe you don't take, right? Maybe you just go Bishop D7 and keep the pressure. But maybe Bishop D7, maybe there's D5, right? Okay, so it's sharp all around. Or not so sharp, but it's complicated if you're gonna go for a variation like that. But okay, Bishop takes C6. It's not complicated. This one's not complicated, but it's not complicated in a bad way, right? It's not complicated that black is just going to be slightly better for the remainder of the game. Okay, Rook C5. Not sure what we're doing here. The rook looks nice on C5, but that's about it, right? It just looks nice. This can be sort of the advantage of an isolated pawn, is you get a lot of activity, right? A lot of open lines, but again, not a lot of pieces for white, right? So the fewer pieces there are on the board, the more that's going to favor the side who's playing against the isolated pawn. Because, okay, white is supposed to have more activity, but if you don't have any pieces, okay, there's only so much activity you can have. So there's more cons than pros here for the white side. Okay, Queen F4, another very nice move. Just putting pressure on that key defender, that F3 knight. B4, you just take everything, and now, okay, the rook endgame, I mean, this is very difficult. This might already be lost. I don't want to overstate the case, but this is already a very, very difficult endgame to hold for white. The principle of two weaknesses, right? Weakness there. Okay, maybe H3 is not, maybe that's manageable, but just several weaknesses, to put it mildly, for white. And if you have more than one weakness in an endgame, oftentimes your opponent is going to slowly be able to build up the pressure, and you're going to get stretched thin as the defending side here. So Rook D6. I mean, I think the play is pretty straightforward here, but do you have any other ideas than doubling up, or did you just want to go Rook D6?
Kind of my plan all along. Just double up and then maybe push my e-pawn.
Yeah, very. This is like textbook so far, and I think the rest of it is basically as good as it gets. Rook D5, preventing the pawn from pushing. That's sort of the whole idea of playing against the isolated pawn, is you want to really get an iron grip over the square just in front of the isolated pawn, because, again, this pawn has no neighbors. If there were any neighbors, you'd be able to kick that rook away, right? But now, since it's an isolated pawn, it's going to live there forever.
And now just E5 is cool.
Yep.
Exactly.
And I don't think there's anything you can do, right? Maybe you try to go for activity now and try to sack the pawn, but this is not going to...
Yeah.
This I don't think is going to cut it, because, again, it's not just the weakness here, and yeah, we're going to get so much activity. It's not just that, it's also there's other weaknesses too, right? So maybe you don't even have to force it like this. I mean, maybe actually now that I'm looking at it, this is probably tending more towards a draw. But the point stands. It's not just the d4 pawn that, oh, if we just sack that pawn, we're going to be okay as white. We're just going to be down one pawn. No, after that pawn falls, there's also these terrible weaknesses on these other doubled and isolated pawns. Weak pawn on a3, right? It's not good. And now e5 and everything just falls apart. You're going to lose that pawn here, and everything's going to fall apart like a house of cards. King g3. Very nice. Not rushing, right? Just improving the king. f4. Pick up one pawn. And I'm curious, why didn't you take with the rook?
Yeah, so I didn't have a lot of time here. I had like probably 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I tried calculating it like on his turn, and it just like was not working in my head.
Okay, that can happen.
If he would take, like, I don't really know.
This is definitely the type of position where you can start to see ghosts in time trouble. But yeah,
I think pushing, and then I thought that he could somehow save, like, I don't really know.
Maybe. I could see how you could see that in calculating. Yeah, but I think again with the weaknesses, okay, now that I'm actually trying to calculate it concretely, I could see the decision there. But yeah, I'm probably a winning king and pawn endgame, but definitely this is the safe way to go. And if you see one way where you're very confident you're winning, and there's another way that might be objectively more winning, but you're not 100% sure, I think definitely it's the practical choice to go the way you did in time pressure. So okay, h5, maybe bringing the king, and that's exactly what you did. g5. Interesting not to take on Passan here to undouble the pawns. Were you going to take with the king or the pawn here?
I'm pretty sure I was going to take with the pawn.
Yeah, this looks reasonable. Keep the pawns together, right? And always chances of creating a passed pawn this way. But okay, he doesn't take it, and now, okay, very strong pawn here. More weaknesses. This is really looking bad, and now you get the active rook, and it's this is resignable almost for white.
Yeah.
I guess fair to play it out. f3 picks up another pawn, and okay, now I wouldn't want to play this as white. I would throw in the towel here. This looks very
Keep in
bad.
mind, there's still time trouble. Or actually, not anymore, because after 40 moves, James will get plus 30 seconds. 30 minutes.
Isn't there like 30-second delay?
Yeah, there is. But before I played rook e8, it took me I had 8 seconds. I was, and everyone was crowding our board, and it was so bad. I was like,
wait, here? Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was watching me, and I was getting so scared.
Yeah, it goes to show the notation doesn't always tell the whole story.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Here, rook e3, very nice. Simplifying into just a completely winning king and pawn endgame. Nothing wrong with losing one pawn when you already have an extra. And you're going to basically, well, you're up a pawn in a king and pawn endgame. Odds are, without even calculating, you're going to be winning. And here, this one is not even close. Black's way too active. White is going to have to go run to the other side of the board. And okay, now, I guess if they didn't resign before, they might as well keep with the narrative. But very, very nice technique. Keep the king a knight's jump away from the pawn, and you just make a red carpet for the pawn to run all the way to the end of the board. Yeah. So I believe the score sheet went a little longer, but this is as far as we entered it into the study. Again,
I'm pretty sure he actually resigned here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the pawn just runs. Nothing you can do to stop it. Only king moves. These pawns are all frozen. So a very nice game. Again, really textbook win playing against the isolated pawn. Any final thoughts?
I was just really stressed at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I had like time trouble, and it was like the last game, and it was just an important game. But yeah, I felt that it was a pretty solid game.
Definitely. Yeah. So, anything from Jack or Alan?
I have one question. What place did you end up getting at the end of the tournament?
Yeah, so I tied for first with like 4 other people, I'm pretty sure.
Pretty nice
All right.
performance. Goes back to
Good
Alan.
performance. And Jack, as I recall, you got second, right?
Yes, I got second.
All right. Congratulations to everyone. But don't go anywhere. We finished analyzing all our games, but we are not yet done with our show. Why are we not done with our show? Well, because I have some bonus content for you guys. So as some of you guys know, some of you guys don't know, I am not just a chess player. I'm also an athlete. I play 2 sports. I'm a footballer, but my main sport is judo. I'm a fighter, I'm a black belt, and today I went into a competition, my first competition in 2 years. I won 2, I lost 2, and I'm really excited to show you guys my highlight.
Good job, Alan.
Boom.
Pretty nice visual summary of the games we've been looking at today. Nice.
Anyone you think of specifically?
I'm thinking that was Jack's game. That's,
Yeah, that looks like Jack's game.
Yeah. Nice visual
All right,
representation.
one more time. What a throw.
Nice.
And then went on to fight in the championship against somebody 30 pounds bigger. I lost after putting up a good fight for 10 minutes, but yeah, that is the sport. And that is the show today. Thank you so much to everyone for joining. Next week, as I said, is Osfeld Tournament. Last day to register before early bird expires is today. And I hope we get many games from the tournament to display next week, on next Sunday, right after the tournament. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.